So the biggest culprit to why you're not clean is tertiary movement. And if you don't know what tertiary movement is, I highly recommend you watch this Puppet Fundamentals video. It explains all three types of movements in gloving. Basically, as a refresher, primary movement is just moving your fingers. Secondary movement is utilizing just grid space and moving the form. Tertiary movement is the utilization of both. Some of you may have known that I've been teaching gloving professionally for the last 2 years, and most of the students, they all have this similar problem, and that problem is utilizing too much tertiary movement. And I'm not saying that tertiary movement is bad. I'm saying that most of the times glovers aren't able to recognize it, and then therefore we often skip corners or moving too fast. It's all because of tertiary movement. And so an example of good tertiary movement is something like whips, where we're moving our fingers and where we are on the grid at the same time, right? This is a very popular use of tertiary movement. Same thing with the circle move. Look, I'm moving my fingers and I'm moving around the grid, right? What would a circle move look like with just primary movement? It would look something like that, right? I'm not moving my whole form around, but what would a circle move look like in secondary movement? It would look something like this, where there's no primary movements, right? We're not moving our fingers. It might even look something like this, where we're not moving our fingers. We're not bending our fingers. So a circle move that utilizes tertiary movement is an actual circle move, right? So let's break this down when it comes down to things like connections. These are things that I'll see commonly with all glovers, basically. I'm not saying that anyone is perfect, but it's important to recognize that this is a thing, right? So you know how to clean it up. And I'm gonna be utilizing wave tutting for this example. So most times when we do wave tutting, right, we have like this grid, and then we'll like do something like this where we're doing a finger roll from our pointer to our pinky, right? And then so there's multiple ways to execute this. We can move the whole form just like this, but notice that when I move the whole form, like in tertiary movement, it's kind of risky, right? Because if I'm like moving all around, all right, and I were to do a finger roll and then like land, it kind of gets off the grid, right? Compared to if I were to just do primary movement, then move. You see how much logical sense that makes, rather than kind of just moving? There's a risk there, right? Not saying that it's bad, but there's a risk. And oftentimes when this happens is sometimes you'll see glovers do this tertiary movement with their hands, right? But before they even complete this finger roll to the pinky, they're already moving their second hand. And so then therefore it's very off. Sometimes you'll see people miss their alignment because then they're already moving their hand before finishing the first one. There's too much tertiary movement going on. Rather than isolating the movements, then trying to see what mechanic works in landing to this particular form, right? We're often just neglecting that. We're often just kind of just moving along, and we're never really establishing a grid. And establishing a grid is a big portion on how you can be clean. This even goes especially for finger rolls. You might not be thinking grid in terms of finger rolls, but when you do a finger roll, right, the grid is within this part of our knuckles here. There's an actual grid happening, right? There's an actual isolation that's happening. Notice how when I do this finger roll, I'm isolating this whole hand here. I'm not like moving it around. If you want that clean finger roll, you need a level of isolation with your arms, not necessarily with your fingers, but to be able to even do a box move, right? I'm isolating my hand here now, and I'm isolating to the bottom, right? And so isolations exist everywhere, guys. Not just because you're like moving a lot doesn't mean that there isn't an isolation point. You just might have to think, where's the isolation point? Where's the isolation point? But even with things like that, right, I'm doing just primary movement when I'm doing this finger roll. Just primary movement because I'm not moving the form. Primary, okay? After I do that primary, I'm moving in secondary with my right hand while doing primaries with just my left hand. Then I'm placing it there, right? I'm finishing the secondary movement. I'm placing it there to get that box moves, right? So it's, again, same thing. Primary move. secondary, right? Now I'm in secondary. Primary, right? Primary, move. Now it's just secondary, right? And so it's important to have a level of speed control and to have a level of stick. Make sure that whenever you do a movement, especially in things like tracing, right? A movement, you trace and then you stick. There's a level of speed control there in order for you to be clean. That stick helps you get out of tertiary movement all the time. And so if you're someone who has struggled with being clean, try implementing this method. Let me know. Are you a culprit of too much tertiary movement? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe. Hope this video helps. Stick around for more Gloving Academy content. Peace. If you're looking for whites, batteries, skins, or any other gloving accessory, head on over to glow-leds.com and don't forget to use my code AlohaNation for 10% off. Big shoutouts to all current Gloving Academy Patreon subscribers. Thank you so much for all the support. Seriously, guys. The Patreon's got weekly educational and never-before-seen content, so if you want to take your gloving to the next level and learn from me, come join the Gloving Academy Patreon.